Okay, so before we get started, here at QED, my name is Tim Hatton. How many of you came to the first port engineer estimating class we did? Okay, that was the very first one we did. We've practiced a few more times since they have deemed me the SME for estimating here, and mainly crew devs, but we do across the board estimates on all the ships. So I started 20 years old in Norfolk Naval Shipyard as an apprentice, worked my way up through the paint shop. So here you go, a painter giving a port engineering information. Isn't that great? Love it. So went through the apprenticeship, got into management, got into nuclear, worked nuclear for 17 years. Supervisor, zone manager. My last stint was on the Truman as a zone manager. And then I moved up to engineering because they needed somebody that knew paint. I was part of the NAVC paint inspection team that did all the public yards to make sure that they were in line with all the requirements for blasting and painting submarine ships, you name it, anything that they, so I was involved with that. And then went up into engineering my last 11 years, and I've been with QED for 8. So a total of 45 years, 37 with the government, and it was good. It was a good, you know, ship repair since I was 20 years old. You know, it's important that we give these guys that serve on the ship, and a lot of you are past sailors that are now in the government world. You know how important it is to have a ship that works, and the comforts that, you know, there's only so much comfort you get out there at sea when you're out there for 6-9 months, you know, so it's up to us. So with that being said, I said, you know, the port engineers, what do they do? What is a port engineer's job? We all have different levels of, you know, this is a huge logistical machine that we have when we repair ships. You guys are an integral part to it. So I wanted to put my best foot forward for you guys in this training this time to get better. That's what we try to do. I try to come here and get our estimators better. Are we giving the port engineers a chance to have a decent budget? Now, we know there's a lot of fluctuation that comes, unknowns, it happens. I haven't been on a ship yet that we didn't go down and do a job and we found something else we had to add to it. So then they start contracting that out. So now contractors, you know, they're going to bust you every time they turn around for, you know, delay and disruption and this kind of stuff. So we try to get our scheduling as good as we can get it so we can avoid those costs. Same thing with estimating here at QED. We try our best to think of everything that could possibly be needed for that job. So everybody, they handed out that GIFM. If you get a chance, which a lot of you guys, you got 100 million things you're doing based on what I see here in your job descriptions. I pulled it up again just to make sure I could, but this GIFM has everything we need to know on what we do for estimating, what the government, why we do. So here at QED, just so you know, we do Class C estimates, which is in variance is not expected to exceed 15%. So that's been a lot of discussion on what that 15% is. So my thing is, if a contractor comes in and says he has to redo a fire pump and it costs $500,000, I'm either 15% high or 15% low at this level when that. But there's going to be a refinement that goes through all the way before they bid on it. So a lot of what we do here will be different by the time it gets to bid because we don't do a bid estimate. You guys are even lower than that. You're 40%. So with everything you got to do, you got 1,100 WNs. I'm just using that as a number. It's a lot of work you got to look at. So you depend a lot on history across the board from different ships for the same light work. We know that there's RCCs written. We know there's engineering changes made, as we go through the availability. That increases or decreases costs. You know, so these things affect that end to get that. But our main thing here at QED is to get you to the point where it says here that part of your job description is develop and manage annual repair, capital expenditure budgets, and track costs against these budgets. So they may give you $15 million to do a CMAV. What if you come in at 19 or 20? Where's the other $5 million? What they want to know. So we want to get you guys as close to being accurate as we can. We don't hear any negative things coming back about that, but I have noticed that they're starting to put cost returns attachments in NMB. They got like 3 different ships for light work, and they give the cost bottom line. Now, of course, it doesn't go into all the details on why it costs that, but at least it gives you guys something to say, okay, an average. But the GIFM at our level here at QED, I can't use overtime. I can't consider a C or a D player being the mechanic. I can't consider, oh, what if there was an RCC written on the St. Paul James for this problem, might not exist on this ship. So I can't, they don't want us at our level estimating that kind of stuff. It's man-hour materials. But that doesn't alleviate us. And what I'm trying to do is give you an example, give you a good idea of where we get our number from. So that way you're confident that when you look at it, you can depend that that's a solid, as solid as it could be at a C level estimate. So when that number comes across, you guys, you go down on the ships, a lot of times you may not even go down and look at a job. Am I correct in saying that? I mean, do you look at every single WN work on the ship?
At some point, yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
the job validate.
Okay.
First thing in the job.
Yeah, I've never been a port engineer. I know you guys do a lot of things, but okay, very good. So those that were at the estimating class before, what kind of things do you have to ask right now that you've noticed that you may not have addressed before, to bring up for those that are new, you know, or newer or less?
I think, you know, Travis got them all dealing with a bunch of parts issues. So for the estimating the material part, right? I know I use man hours and labor, but the material part is a big piece that I'm having issues with right now with Code 500 and trying to get parts, materials and stuff like that. So how does that play into the equation for you guys as well?
Okay, so we have several places we go that the government provides us to price material. Haystack being one, SAI Global being another, and then we have some historical information. But if any of that information is more than 3 years old, we have to add 15% per year over it. So we get as much live pricing on material as we can get. Now, long lead time material is taking care of the planner. So some of that, are you talking as long lead time material? Or
yeah, the main issue is not really the QED's fault, is that, you know, Code 500, they go, we can't find it. But ship supply officer can see it in his system on other ships. So it's just a matter of making sure Code 500 can use all their resources to find the parts, right?
I agree.
So
I agree. I wish we had access to some more stuff to be able to get, because material is huge. Let's face it. You know, it's either going to be a lot of waste, or it's not going to be the right stuff, or it's, you know, material has been an issue ever since I worked for the government, especially, you know, at the level when I was working with ships over in the PCs and the MCMs over in Bahrain. What a nightmare, trying to get them material. And sometimes some of the material we would send, the shelf life would expire by the time the job got going. And then the ship's like, we can't use the product because it's at the shelf life. So what they do is they take off the front of the shelf. So what we had to do in our contracts is start saying, hey, you need to give us something that's good for the length of, it's got to be almost brand new right off the press, because we're just spending way too much money for stuff we can't use because it's expired. And we have no way of when it comes to paint and that kind of things, they can do that. They can do an inspection, they can do certain things, and they say, okay, you could use it. But it's only good for 6 months. So we were having a huge problem with that. And some of it was long lead time material. So by the time they got it, they don't have a whole lot of time. And it's expired. They're like, what's going on? So yeah, huge material. But we have quite a few tools that give us fresh, off the press, what it costs. We still run into the issues though with materials that nuts, bolts, fasteners, you got to buy 50 of them. You need 2. I find that a lot on ship alts, when I do ship alts, what Van was talking about. I need 4 bolts to bolt this down. That's all the drawing calls for. They don't call for 50, but I got to buy 50. But most people aren't going to sell 4. I mean, it's just the nature. So that's just an example of how material can add up, especially at our level here. Sometimes the costs still aren't where they're at, and we're working on that. Go ahead.
There's no comprehensive effort to buy 50 for all the ships that need them, and then pull from that stock.
Somewhere in the line, yeah.
That might not be something you can influence. but
Yeah.
As a new guy from this year,
Right.
I'm asking a lot of those questions, and the answer at this level is we don't own it, or it's too compartmentalized, or even the VSB NMD debacle. It's really kind of frustrating that you reach a ceiling and be like, this
Yes,
would
it
help
does.
comprehensively, but we're not organized enough as NAVC down or SurfLand down to actually function that way.
Yeah,
It's really pretty tough.
I've experienced with that situation. Some people just say, "Hey, it is what it is,"
Yeah.
We'll fix it later. We got bigger fish to fry. I've heard that right on the deck plates,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Well, we don't
Which
need
is
that
true,
much,
but you can just
Can't
allocate
this
someone at
ship
the
use
proper
it?"
authority to
Right.
go fix it.
Right.
Or
So.
do anything else.
So we would even borrow from ship to ship, and there was a way that they could charge the other ship's budget to pay back the ship that bought it that doesn't need it anymore. So we did that interior of Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Now the private yards, I don't know if North Shipco and BAE do that, but I know in Norfolk Naval Shipyard, the availabilities that were in there, we would do that. So that way we were reducing our costs with material, just like you're saying. So that way, if this ship needs 10 of them and we have 10 extra ones, but they get that budget thing.
Yeah, but there's no way to do that in
Right.
our current structure on our side of the house.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just insane to me.
Really, the only way is that we're communicating amongst each other. Like, if I know that he's doing using the same type of material I'm using, they got extra, I can say, hey,
Yeah.
I got an extra 6.
Yeah, that's a one-off. That's not organizationally.
We've been bringing it up for years that, someone needs to go and, the things that you're just canning down the list over and over. But the company's saying, well, I'm not gonna go and ramp up production to make 2 of them.
Right.
Someone higher up needs to say, we need to buy 50 or 100 of these, and nobody's making that decision. We've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's across the board in so many different topics, not
Yeah.
just fasteners.
You could just go through the ACAN list for all the ships and just say, we're just moving these right down the row, and, nobody knows that though.
I'm just going through this real quick, because there's some things you guys just don't. Okay, so identifying the work, you just went through all that with the spec review. Getting into the spec review when it comes to ship alts, just so you know, we're ship alts. We use the drawings to base what we do. So on ship alts, the costs are all what they ask for on the drawing, and then we do all the square footages, all the linear feet, everything that's listed on there gets estimated on what it takes based on total number. So if they're giving me on 8 sheets, I have a total of 295 square feet of plate. The standard that we use in estimating for welding doesn't change if I'm doing 10 square feet of a door or 10 square feet of a deck. What changes it is interferences and what it actually is, because you got stiffeners and you got other things that have to come into play. So we normally will add a operating factor into our estimates for that kind of bulkhead, decks, tanks, to compensate for all those. You know, they give it in square feet, but we put about 15, sometimes 15 to 25% for angles, and depending on where it's at. Some places have more stiffeners, more angles, more supports. They have to cut out more things just to be able to do what they did. So we use an operating factor, and they give it to us in our databases. So let me go work notification. We've discussed that. You guys well know about that. QMS, that's something we use here. Estimating tools. You can see everything that we go to help us get the estimates that you guys. There's your long lead time material advanced planning reports. So that way we can get true costs. Yes, sir.
Is that for D-alts and K-alts, or just D-alts only? Because I know the K-alts are planned and authorized, planned not authorized.
Right, we mainly see D.
Right, because I know the K-alts, they're paid for by the NFC.
Yeah, we normally see D-alts, yeah. Yeah, that's what our big, yeah. So just some of the information that you can see what we use. This is a tool we can use if NMD is down. We have a sheet that's exactly the same as what NMD has, and that way we don't stop production if NMD goes down, which we haven't had that problem in quite a while. So government got better with the system. This is what the government has come out and given us as an estimating tool. We discussed this in the last class. This, I would hope you guys have access to this GFEG, as they call it. It went into effect back in 2019 is when the government, I got a letter that says it was back when so they give us tools to use. August 29th, 2018 is when they had us start using the GFEG. Up to that point, we were using method. Go ahead,
Can we
Ken.
get that from Cortel? Because if we can get it from Cortel, I can put it in the QED Point Engineer website on the hot side if you need to. But
You could, the RMC,
I think that was what Skip was saying that he may have access to
right.
at the last time,
Right.
if memory serves. But he,
Yeah, because this is an
Look into
RMC.
that.
This is an RMC guide, so I would hope you guys would have access.
yeah, I think he said that he has access potentially, but that they didn't specifically.
well, I'm going to pull it down and put it where I can put it without letting, so I'll take that.
Because it will definitely help you guys kind of see the. But also with that, you guys are still held to that 40%. So I don't know how deep into weeds as a port engineer individually you want to go with your estimates. We, like I said, we're called the 15%. By the time it gets to Class A detailed cost, which it really breaks it down into what they needed, that's 10%. and then they go to the bid estimate. So the RMCs and all the lawyers and everybody get together and they hash out what that final cost is going to be. So that's why I ask, and say, I don't know how deep you guys want to get into the weeds, but that GFEG, as we call it JPEG, just acronym, tells you, it'll give you actual man hours for all the different work. Let me get to, all right, so I'm going to go to the Planner's Handbook FY28. So the ones that we use the most is 16 and 7, section 16, which is the Cat 1 in notes, and then the miscellaneous. So I'll open up. You open up the Cat 1s. The reason I want to show you guys the Cat 1s is because these Cat 1 items in the GIFM, they list on page line 516. They put in here that category 1 are invoked with the following packages for guidance. They got 009, 04, 07, 10, and they go down the whole list of ones that need to be considered in the estimates. So what we do is, I'll give you an example, 32. Where's it at? All right, I'm just going to open up this one. See, they give you a kind of a breakdown for blasting and surface prepping. So they give you the 100 square feet, how many hours per 100 square feet for the different levels of what you're doing. The painting, this is all based on the contractor. I called these guys and asked them, if I'm doing 100 square feet or less, why am I giving somebody 12 hours? It don't take 12 hours to do 100 square feet of painting. Maybe depending on where you're at or what you're doing or how good you are, and they said it's all based on the contractor. If they go out to the contractor and they have more than 5,000 square feet to do, they give them a cheaper price per man hour. So we use the numbers that the government gives us, because if I use these numbers to figure out my estimate, I can't be wrong. It's the way I look at it. Even though I might not agree with it, might be more, might be less. If they say it's 12 man hours per 100 square feet and I'm doing 100 square feet, I'm going to pay the guy 12 hours. And if he's putting on 2 coats of paint, that's 24 hours. That's a lot for a 10 by 10 area. You probably take a roller at home on a flat bulkhead and do 10 by 10 area in 5 minutes. And that's if you're talking to your wife while you're doing it, So, but I just want to show you that because the numbers will sometimes get larger because of that. Now, one other thing with that is, what was I going to, let me see here. Let's go to this rotating, let's go here. So you can see for the different, they break it down. This is what we use to get our numbers. They do a pretty good job of giving us the information. But the thing I'm showing you these Cat 1s for is because we estimate what's written in the WI. So if a Cat 1 isn't normally called out in some cases, because they're not required to be called out in the WI, but if they took temporary access cuts and made them a Cat 1 item. So when you're doing tank work in a dry dock and you're blasting and painting, you need temporary access cuts. And there's other areas where they give you a drawing, you guys well know, of a rigging path and access cuts that they know they have to make for certain jobs on a certain amount, however length the availability is and what work they're doing. A lot of times that don't get estimated. Here, I get with my estimators and I say, don't forget these Cat 1 items, because they get lost in the work because they're there all the time. So what pays for that? Well, we have to make sure that if there's a Cat 1 item, we're covering it, it's paid for. Temporary access is one of them that's huge. It costs a lot of money to do temporary accesses. You guys know that, depending on where they're at. If it's sitting waterside, now they want to make an access cut to do a repair, but you got to put a cofferdam on it. So now they're calling out a cofferdam. So these are the things that we, as a group, discuss, because we want our estimates to be better. Every day we walk in here, we want to give you a better product as a port engineer, so you can meet budget, so you can explain why your budget might be a little higher than normal. So just wanted to show you that as far as the Cat 1 items. And also, there's a lot of reports. You know, you probably hear the contractors bitch about reports. Oh, yeah, that's all you want is a report. So they made a group to kind of reduce the amount of reports that are required. So they put some of them in the Cat 1s, but they're not getting paid for it. But the contractor's charging you for it, and they're not in the estimate. So what the government came out and said, okay, we are going to do a 20% QA, 20% supervision on every line item for work. So if I have a ship fitter, an electrician, and a structural guy and a welder, whatever amount of hours that adds up to be, I'm going to multiply it by 20%, and that's what I'm going to put in QA and supervision. Because on the tail end of it, that covers any of those unknowns that have been popping up on the government in Cat 1 items. So that's where that coverage is for. So if you look at an estimate, I don't know how many of you look at estimates. I talked to the guys about the spec review. I said, in the spec review, do you guys talk about estimates? It was kind of like crickets, maybe a little bit, maybe none at all. Somebody has been estimating for a long time. For some reason, the government, they will come up and say, and don't get me wrong, I worked for them for 37 years. I loved my job, and I would go back and work too, but I don't want to go back on board ship. But anyway, so they would, where was I going with that? Lost my thought. This is what happens when you hit 65 too. You got all these things you want to remember. What was I? Help me out here. Where was I going with that? No?
They want to know price, but they don't care about the money.
Yeah, they,
Or the estimating process.
yeah, they kind of, when we give them, they take into account, but they really don't. You know, they, I'll come back to that. I'll get it. It'll come back to me. So, go ahead.
So, you've talked about a few times of, interferences, TAOs, staging,
Right.
and those are all things that we don't put in the work spec. So for your estimating, do you rely on the ship checkers or information from us, or does an estimator go on the ship checks with the ship checking?
No. When I was planning, before I went strictly estimating, we would go down and do a ship check.
Yeah.
We called them ship check Fridays, ship check Wednesdays. We would go down with 20 WNs on things that we had questions about, and we would verify it ourselves. So the planners here, that's where we got the ship checks. And we depend on all that. That's why I brought up the pictures from the port engineers. If they do have pictures, at least, let us know, and then that way if we have a question, we can go look. Same thing with ship checks, but we don't always get ship checks. If ships are deployed and we don't have a sister ship anywhere close to this area, sometimes it takes a while to get ship checks, and the estimate's already estimated before the ship check even gets put in the folder. Does that answer? Yeah, but all that comes into play with us. Yeah, I want all that information. Anything I can get, because they require a 15% variance, but if I can get inside of that, I do my best to give the best estimate. We all do here. The best estimate we can give you, so when you go out there, you have something that you can depend on is accurate. as can be at that point. You can't get it perfect, but we can get better thinking of those things. So all that comes into play, pictures and all that, ship checks. But no, the estimators don't, no. Planners don't even go on ship checks here. That's why they have a ship check division. When I was with the government, we did all that.
Right.
We ship checked it, we took pictures, we, you know, because we were the guys that were writing the item.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and it plays a huge dividend because we went down on a carrier, look at a pipe, we saw it on the drawing, we couldn't really determine what they were wanting done. So we went down there and come to find out it was on the sponson, underneath the sponson, in a dry void. And we looked down, we could see the water. There's a hole in the sponson right by the pipe. It was this big around. We're like, they didn't say nothing about that. So then we got, you know, we wrote a PCFR, got the information. In the government, they would do a Block 35 change. A lot of that doesn't get done here with Block 35s. They used to change them. I don't know how much we change them now, but we do have PCFRs that we write for those kind of things that they might find.
For our Block 30, once we authorize it, it's basically locked.
Yeah. Yeah. So all that comes, yeah, helps us
Doesn't
immensely.
matter if we change it after that.
So any questions on why we charge for the Cat 1s and how we do that? We good? This is the one that we use for miscellaneous estimates. As you can see, there's a whole, but this is what I was getting at, this deck and bulkhead plating. See, they give you numbers for what it takes to do a 32 square foot piece of plate. So, you know, and all the different sizes. So that helps, but the reason I wanted to show you Cat 1, let me go to 00912. Let's see if I want to show you something for the, okay, for the welding here. All right, here's 12. Give you an idea of what I was talking about earlier about difficulty. All right, so right here they got the man hour rate that they give you for the different plate thicknesses. They got several. So they don't give you any hours right here. So you go down to these tables, and down here they have a operating factor for rate for welding. Difficult, it gives you, you know, they give you an example of what's difficult. Now I would consider that's tanks, bilges, uptakes, intakes. I'm sure there's places where, you know, because I've seen it, and I've had to go paint them, that the welders just catch hell trying to get it done. Something that should take them an hour takes them 6, just because of where they're at and how they have to do it, and they got to bend their rods. And so they give us this to give a good difficulty factor, and we use it. So that way you guys know that when you see welding, there's a lot that goes into what we do to give you that number. And it actually tells you total time is actual time plus times the operating factor. So any questions on that? All right, so I guess I'm good with showing you that stuff. We'll go back.
Do we get access? Can we get access to those resources? To that one that you just pulled up?
That was what I was talking about, was the GFEG, the one that Ken was saying he'd like to get. Yeah.
You'll find out probably tomorrow because I'm going to do it today.
Yeah.
I wrote down the link and I'm going to get access to it. And if all you got to do is click into the link, sign up for it, and get permission to use it, I'm going to post the link at the PEU media guide. And so everybody will have access to it. I'll let y'all know.
I mean, anything that you guys could use as port engineers to help you verify and understand where the estimate comes from. You know, you guys got a lot to do. I've read your job description. I looked it up. Looked up United States Naval Port Engineer job description. Man, there's a lot in there you guys do. So I don't know how much time you have, but you do have a responsibility per the GIFM that in NMD you are you have access to many estimates. Matter of fact, let me do this.
Yeah, it's labeled CUI, so you're probably gonna have to, some of your T-Solutions and some of your KMS, and you're not gonna be able to use your personal computers to get to it without your CAC. So I'm gonna put it to where you're gonna have to use your CAC to get to it, probably your NMCI machines. But first thing I'm gonna do, we're supposed to get out here at 12. At 12:30, I'm gonna go try to get access to it, and then I'm gonna see what I gotta do to get into it. And then I will post, I'm gonna get a list of everybody who's here today, send it out to everybody. Here's the link and what you gotta do to get it. Now, I might not get permission to get into it until later today, when somebody looks at it and says, okay, you've got permission, or no, you don't have permission. And as soon as they say you do have permission, so you might not see it till tomorrow, but sometime in the next 24 hours, you'll see what to do to get linked to that, to this document.
Based on what you do and what you're required to do, and you're working for the United States government, and it's a United States government document, I would think that you should have access to it, you know? Now, there are some things, you know, you're not gonna get access to a nuclear power manual,
No,
but
that's
you can
the-
have access to this. I mean, this is, you know, we're all required to have a secret clearance here, but
It's a CNRMC document, it doesn't say
Right.
QED proprietary, so.
That's
I'm
right.
gonna be able to use it.
right. And that's another thing that gets me, just get off topic real quick. You know, we work under a government contract to do exactly what you guys do, just at a different level. But there's a conflict of interest because we're contractors and you guys are government. I never understood that. I understand at the bidding purpose what the contractor says he costs and I understand that. But when it comes to what we're talking about here, you know, if we're doing something that is a government, I would think you'd have access to it. Is that what you're going to say, Kyle?
Well, I was just saying, we're not even government. I'm a contractor representing the wrong contractor.
Oh, really?
We're mixed.
Oh, okay.
We got three groups in here, T-Solutions, KMS.
Oh, okay.
and government.
All right. But still, they're in the role of a port engineer. You guys see where I'm going with it. I think we should have access to stuff that makes our job better, that makes our budgets better, that makes our schedules better, regardless of what you're doing, even when you're a contractor for the United States government, as we are doing what we do. I'm not saying all contractors should be that way, but there are some that should have access. So I want to show you guys something here that we have. Now, I can tell you from an estimating standpoint that I am like you guys. I look across the enterprise from Southeast Regional Maintenance Center to the West Coast to Northwest to here in Marmac. We do all these availabilities. These are the DDGs. Now we have in this toolbox, we have all the ships. What happened here? Okay, right here. So you got LCSs, LHAs, LHDs, LPDs, LSDs. They're all availabilities that we've done estimates and WIs on. So I'm going to pick the one we're doing right now, the 66. So it's got all the availability. So when you go down to 27 CN001, every estimate and every WI is saved in this folder. So I save estimates into a separate folder under estimating. That gives a quick, let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can get to it and show you. But anyway, it's estimates across the board. They're completed estimates, completed WIs. So what I can do is I can take like ships and I can look at what Frank over in Northwest did on this job, and it's written exactly the same here, and look at his numbers and look at Sally's numbers from Southeast and look at what they did in San Diego and what we did here. I got 4 availabilities or 4 different ships. I can look and go, okay, what hours did they use to kind of get an idea, because I don't know everything. What I get a lot of time is from the standards. My experience at it, I have, so I can look at something and go, it's 24 hours to do that work. Go ahead, Kim.
So I know in San Diego and here in Norfolk, QED is planning and estimating out of NMD for upcoming events.
Yes.
I know down in Mayport, the RMC does the planning and estimate. But do y'all share information like that?
Yes.
RMC and
Everybody has access to everybody else's information. We call each other, because sometimes I'll look at something and you might interpret or see something a little different. You might add an additional 8 hours to a job. I'm saying it's 16 based on what I'm looking at, but Ken said it was 24. Well, maybe I'll slip Ken an email. 8 hours really isn't going to sink the ship, but there's some that are significant. You look and there's 24 more hours, and I'm thinking something's different with this work somewhere on why this person thought it would take 48 and not 24. So we do have access to other people to ask them, and they may have something I didn't even think about. And I'll go, okay, I agree. And I'll change my number based on the information I'm getting from somebody else. Because let's face it, we don't know it all. We look at something and we judge it on what we might be able to do, or what you've seen done in the past. And it might be different now. You know, a lot of reasons come into play. So yeah. But to show you so right here in this folder that I use, all I got to do is either put the item number up here, and anything that's a 58311, if that even exists. I think it does. It'll, see, look at all the different slewing arms. We just did the boat davits. You know, the rigid hull. I mean, it gives you a whole list of work that was done. And you can go in there and you can look, match them up, and then make a decision on if you need any help estimating something. So, as you can see, I wanted to show you as port engineers, because you are going to look at an estimate sooner or later. And I want you guys to have confidence that QED has done everything at our disposal to have history and to have up-to-date numbers to help you guys get where you got to get to in your estimates. Oh, I know what I was going to say now. Estimates. The government doesn't always come back and talk about estimates. A project might say, hey, whoa, why is my temporary services $6 million? And it was $2 million on the, this availability. Well, you got to look at mandate rates. You got to look at length of availability. All those come into play. All they see is numbers. But then somebody will say somewhere along the line, don't worry about it, or we're not going to go there right now, and we get no feedback. So as an estimator, even when I was with the government, if somebody in the government doesn't come back and say, look, temporary services, we need to bump this up, and this is why we need to bump it up, and this is where we need to bump it up to, and these are the reasons why. But we don't get that. So we think the temporary estimate for temporary services is okay, because nobody's telling us it's not. It's contractual, I guess, because I'm not getting that feedback. And it might very well be a good estimate. I just don't get that feedback. I don't know if the government has enough people to do that, but they attach history in NMD, so somebody's looking at it. Somebody's looking at costs across the board. They have to. So they're not getting railroaded by the contractor. They got to keep them in check. That's why they have private yards, and that's why they have public yards. You well know that as port engineers. Somebody has to check somebody else. If we have nothing but private yards, how do we know that we're getting the bang for our buck? We might not be, but our hands are tied. So they have private yards, public yards, and that keeps everything, quote, in balance. And that's what we try to do as estimators for you guys, is to look at it and keep it where it needs to be for today, because costs rise and costs fall. Man days rise and fall, but man hours don't. 32 square foot of plate going in a build that we've done 100 times, the hours aren't going to change unless there's extraordinary circumstances that now have come into play on this ship that we have to adjust for. But sometimes we don't know that until we get into it, or until we go down and do an inspection. So that's where the differences come in estimates. But sometimes the government, they just don't. We had one time I had to look at routine items, and we were looking at the routine items, and then they have what they call template estimate. So if you were in NMD and looking at a WI that was on one of your projects, and you go to the estimate and it says template estimate up there and it doesn't have a name on the right hand upper corner, that template estimate wasn't estimated by us. Well, what happened was the government took template estimates and took all the ones that they had given us to say we need these estimates improved, and found out that the government wasn't even close to what we were even at. And some admiral or somebody said, "Hold, time out. We need to fix what we're doing so we can have a comparable," because what they ultimately want in NMD, and what NMD was set up for, was the guy who has 6 months training and the guys that have 27 and 37 and 45 years, and Navy guys, because Navy guys don't see everything on the ship. Let's face it, you're kind of set in a position, and that's what you're the SME of that, electrical, mechanical, whatever it might be. They want you to be able to go in there, pull the template, look at it, make it match references for that ship, work for that ship based on the WN, and the template is already laid out. You just have to put the new information in there, and there should be a template estimate based on, and it should be able to be used that quick. So that way it saves time, saves money, and they're putting out a quality product. Well, as we well know, it takes a little bit more than that, but that was their goal. And that's what the template estimate's goal is to reduce the amount of time it takes to do estimates. Reduce the amount of time it takes, but still have a contractually good document. That's the whole goal to NMD. That's what it was all set up for. I was on the front end of that when it was coming in. We were doing them more Word documents. So if you see a template estimate, you need to bring that up to the APS. Now, we don't get very many of them anymore. We were having some issues with that because some of the APSs would go in and they'd see an estimate. Oh, estimate's done. They wouldn't read it, and they'd put it incomplete, send it to the the RMC, and the RMC, whoa, time out. The project manager, hey, this hasn't been estimated. And then they go back. So we have very, very few of them anymore. But if you see it, you need to bring that up to the APSs. Say, look, this isn't done. So, and that was one of the reasons I asked if they even review estimates at all in the reviews, WI reviews, and they said they really don't. So somewhere down the line they get looked at. Any questions? Am I boring you? Do you need a break? You need 10, 5? No? I'm going to try to get you guys out of here as quicker than... Okay, these are the estimate classifications. Went over that. Ship checks. Went over that. See, this stuff helps. All this kind of stuff helps. You know, we can see what's going on. So, can't tell you how important it is. For instance, like these deck plates. You know, they're missing the clips, but the way it was written, as you can find, they wanted to replace the deck plates. And all they had to do is replace the clips. So, yeah, that could be pretty expensive. And that doesn't do you any good because now I'm giving you an estimate. I'm replacing deck plates. That could be a pretty expensive job to do. And that's in your budget. You know, you're looking and you're going, wow, what, you know, and then,
Ship force capable.
right. Right. So ship check finds it and they go, oh, this isn't what's happening, and they change it. And I know you guys know this stuff happens. I mean, that's why it's so important that, like you were saying, we communicate with one another and ask questions. And a lot of people go through a lot of this. I'm just kind of going through. There's some stuff you guys... My thing is, you guys don't need to know how we get there. You just need to know kind of what the philosophy and what we use to get there. You don't really need to get deep into the weeds on what we do as estimators here at QED, but you have to know how we get there. And that's my main goal is to help you guys understand where it's coming from. So that way when you look at it, you can say, well, that don't look right. Because I don't know if I'm wrong unless I'm told sometimes. Let's face it. You know, we think we're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and somebody comes up and says, whoa, 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 what are we doing this for? You know, why aren't we doing it this, 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 and this? And we go, ah.
We don't want to refine it too much, because we're plus or minus 40%. You guys are plus or minus 50%.
Right.
And if we refine it too much, we're cutting our own throats. We
Right.
gotta stay at that plus
Right.
or minus 40% so we can get more money for the avail.
Exactly.
Cut out later, we gotta give more now.
Right.
Stay
I'm
plus
with
or
you.
minus 40%.
I'm with you. Push material, all that kitted material, logic, we talked about how we get there. This comes out of the GIFM. There's a checklist in here. It's got the trades. So if you've never looked at the volume, you know, GIFM, Volume 7, Chapter 5, just if you don't have anything else better to do, or just sit down and read it real quick, and it kind of gives you the idea of some stuff in there you don't need to know, but other stuff's come into play pretty, gives you work sequences, and yeah. So that would probably help you guys. For those of you that are newer, maybe don't have all the experience, it kind of gives you an idea of the work sequence on how the work will get done, give you a better idea of what you price. Here's your work sequences here. You know, we try to keep them in common order. You know, logical sequence is what 4E says. You know, I'm not gonna inspect something without taking the manway cover off first. You know, open and inspect, yeah. But sometimes it gets written that way. So there's your 2020. Oh yes, resubmitting the estimate. So what happens here, when you guys go through a review, and like we saw in the video, they were changing amounts, that needs to come back. The APSs, they take that, and before they get back with you guys with an email, it's supposed to come back through estimating, and we're supposed to make the adjustment and then reissue it back to the APSs, so that way they can turn it over to you and close it out and get it ready for award. So that's key.
So you start estimating on the initial spec, not the final planning floor.
So when it goes to QA, when it goes to our QA, and it comes out of them, it comes to me. and then I distribute it. We estimate it. I review it. I'm the estimator reviewer for the code, and then I send an email to the supervisor. Okay, we're good. Estimate's good. We can, and then they send it on to the APS. So when it goes through the changes, it comes back to me. I estimate it, and then it goes back through the channel again. So it's after the planner, the supervisor, and QA have looked at it. And, you know, you guys do a spec review, which I've been involved with them before, but as an estimator, I do a spec review before you guys even touch it. Because we got to go line by line, is how we estimate. They say in 4E that you could put it in the main paragraph. The reason I don't like putting everything in the main paragraph, which they say it's okay, is if your sub-steps have work, 40 square feet of bulkhead plate, 15 linear feet of flat bar, deck replacement, and then as you go through your review, you decide you don't need 15 linear feet of flat bar and it gets taken away, it doesn't take the money out of the main step. It doesn't take the hours away. It doesn't take the material away. So I tell my guys, we need to go line by line. Don't put multiple items that have action items in the main paragraph, because if they delete something, it doesn't go away. So now our estimate is not going to be what it should be. Does that make sense? So that's why I try to get these guys to go line by line. So what I'm doing is I'm doing the distribution oil box on the CPP system. 3 ships with the template. Says nothing about resilient mounts. Not a thing about resilient mounts. So on the Gonzales, based on the Mahan, somebody along the way said we want to do the resilient mounts. This was on the Mahan. 2 resilient mounts. Well, he put it on the Gonzales after talking to the APS on the Gonzales, and he said, yeah, we want to do what they did on the Mahan. Well, there's nowhere in the template, and there's nowhere in there that has 00992 for resilient mounts. You have to remove them, inspect them, you got to inspect the foundation, you got to paint the foundation, and then you got to reinstall the mounts. Where is that work? But if I went, so as I'm going through, the reason I found it was I looked in the material. And I said, resilient mounts. I see the other information they have in there is in 5.1, but there's nothing there's nothing in the, so I had to go back, and it went through 3 people already. So I went back to my boss and said, hey, where's 00992 for the resilient mounts? These guys are going to get this thing, they're going to approve it, it's going to go to bid, and they're going to say, hey, we got to buy resilient mounts. Well, where's the work for it? Now you're missing something. And it could be, you know, even though it says in the estimating guides, 4 hours for a 6-inch round mount. Well, if it's not a 6-inch round mount, I got to figure out what it costs for the other resilient mounts, so I got to look somewhere else. So I tell you that we look line by line by line, and we look at the material, and we review it just like everybody else reviews it. So we're doing a review before you even get it. But it got by 3 people, QA included. How that happens, I don't know. I don't know if the person's having a bad day. I have bad days. I have my estimators come back to me and say, hey man, you missed this. On the Tom Hanks, you missed this. Oh man, I can't believe, how did I miss that? Well, maybe I was having a bad day. Maybe I was busy. Maybe I had 5 reviews I'm doing, and they all have to be done by 2 o'clock. Well, they got to be done by 2. Well, I'll get them done as soon as I can. No, we need them by 2 o'clock because you got a spec review at 3. You know, pressures come from, and sometimes we get in a hurry and we miss stuff. Happens. But that's why we have reviewers review. So the guy who reviewed mine missed it. And as humans, if you know Lee, and you know Lee does a pretty daggone good job, when you see something come from Lee and you're strapped and you got to make a deadline, well, I know Lee knows what he's talking about, but then Lee forgot something. But it's just human nature. That's what we do. So anyway, I'm just telling you that we review these things pretty tight, and we catch stuff and we try to fix it. And then it gets to the APS, they review it, then it gets to you guys, and you do it. So hopefully, by the time it gets out the end of the chute, ready for award or ready for packaging, we've caught all that kind of stuff. So, any questions on that? Anything else you think you need to know, or I'm kind of, I've been mulling over this for a lot in my mind on what I need to tell you guys, because it's different for you guys. You're in a whole different arena, but eventually my estimate affects what you do. So that is our goal here, is to avoid you guys getting into a place where, so this talks about what we had already talked about with the WI familiarity from other places. The data, I mean, you guys could look at everything in NMD, I think. You could look at availabilities you don't even have, right? Yeah, when I was with the government, I could look at everything. Here, we can't do that. As soon as you guys have your, I think, package ready for award, we can't even look at it because they don't want anybody going in and changing anything. But the government can look at it. You got something, Chuck?
No.
Oh, so I wish I could. Now, I can go into NMD under work spec, and I could pull up the work spec from all the availabilities that are in NMD, but I can't look at the estimates. So unless somebody saved it for me, I can't. Sometimes I go to the government, and the government says, well, I'm not really supposed to give that to you because the process says no. So, yeah. Materials. I'm glad I got to this. Where it says consumables here, what we do is the total man hours on a job. There's cotton respirators, there's gloves, there's coveralls, there's Tyveks, there's knee pads, there's safety glasses that this company has to buy. It's just stuff that has to be used on the job, and they're going to charge the government for that material. And that's where we capture anything that we might not have had. So you'll see we charge this $2.25 right here. We tried to do it in man days because, the guy, there's 2,176 man hours. You're not going to use $2.25 for every man hour for consumables, but there's no other way we can do the math for the consumables unless we were in here and made it consumables and we put the quantity, we put a lot, or we put a set, or whatever that number might be, and then just add it all up per man day. Maybe, but, so we're still working on coming up with a better way to capture consumables, because I don't know if $2.25 a man hour is the best we can come up with, but with the government and us talking, we're still in the process. But right now, we're keeping it like it is. So this job had 2,176 man hours at $2.25, $48.96. Depending on what this job was for, I don't see a spec number or anything like that. So, I mean, it very well could be a good number for consumables for that whole job. As you well know, there's a lot of things. So if you see that, that's where that comes from. let's see. Reference guides, we have all kinds of guides we use. Yeah, I pretty much, everything I could think of, I covered that you guys would be interested in and help you guys. Just the use of historical data. The standard will normally be used, what does it say? When historical data has established a standard allowance in labor and material for a work item, that standard will normally be used when estimating that item of work. The estimated cost will change because labor rates and price of materials change with time. So that was what I discussed earlier about how the variations that could go into historical data. Things we don't know of, things that happen on another ship and what have you. So is there anything that you think you need to know or didn't cover, or anything that would help you that we didn't discuss? I think I've given you the right place to go to get a little bit more idea of, because we had one guy in here, he said, yeah, I go down there and I look and I go, 100,000. And he walks out. So we kind of laughed, but sometimes it's like that because you've seen it so many times. Yeah. So the big question is, was it helpful? Because what I'm trying to do is get a little bit better information together for this particular training class, because you guys, are at a level that don't need to get into everything I teach everybody else. So I'm trying to come up with a way that's efficient and it's better for you, and you go away with, oh, okay. You feel a little bit more confident about what you got. Not that you're not confident now, but my job, government pays me to make my estimates better, and to make anybody else I work with personally, I want to make better at what you do.
I think we probably have a quick, in the future, we don't have to do it now, but a quick walkthrough of how you estimate a work item. Just like a quick work item.
Would you guys be interested in that? Because some of them are a piece of cake, and some of them, ship alts. God, I hate ship alts. Man, I got to price every line item, and yeah, it could be ugly. We go to a lot of history when it comes to ship alts, I can tell you that. I look at every possible thing the United States government provides me with ship alts, because they're huge. When you're ripping out a whole living quarters and redoing it, or you're ripping out a whole deck, 07 level on the mast, and you're taking the whole platform off and replacing it. So, yeah. But yeah, we can do that. If you're interested, I'll get with Kelly, and I have one that I use for my estimators. Because the big thing is, yeah, how do you guys do what you do? Where do you get the numbers? How do you figure it out? Yeah, we can do that. And it doesn't take long. It's probably, hour class? Half hour? Yeah, it was like about an hour. And it's mainly because of going through. I sat down with a guy the other day, and I spent 3.5 hours explaining to this new estimator how I got to where I got to. It takes me about an hour to do that same estimate when I'm headsets on into what I'm doing. Yeah, I can click. But when you got to stop and they ask questions, which is fine with me. I want people to know, because I might not be here. I might one day say, "Hey, I'm done. I'm out of here. Somebody needs to do it." I said that 8 years ago with the government. Yeah, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm finished. And now look, I'm back right in ship repair. So that just shows I loved what I did. It was good living. Yep. But the big thing is, if you won't write a check for it, then you need to go back and look at it. But if you'd write a check out of your checkbook for that work, then you know you're confident that you've given the best job you can give them. And that's why I used to tell my guys when I was supervisor, when you leave the space and the captain gets ready to come in here and look at it, if you don't write a check out of your checkbook for it, you need to go back in there and redo whatever you think is wrong before I call the captain or the commander or the lieutenant commander or the chief or whoever it might be to come down there and inspect the space for final closeout. If you don't write a check for it, then there's something wrong. You didn't do something. So that's the whole goal.
All right, I appreciate it.